I'm Kieran. I'm passionate about learning and education. My mission is to help 100,000 businesses leverage digital technologies to make an impact on the world. I do that by helping businesses better understand intelligent automation, emerging technologies, and LinkedIn social media strategy. This dramatically improves their operational efficiency, profitability, and visibility. One of the most important parts of our modern society is the education sector. Quite often, this industry is overlooked when it comes to talking about shiny new technology like RPA and IA, but not today. Today, we're going to talk to Professor Bryant Richards of Nichol College, Boston, who set up and runs the CIPA, the Center for Intelligent Process Automation. Bryant is helping prepare students with RPA and IA skills, and those students will go on to make an impact on society. Bryant, welcome.
Thanks, Karen. Happy to be here.
Bryant, would you mind introducing yourself and telling the audience a little bit more about your background and your experience as the director for CIPA at Nichol College, please?
Sure. Happy to. Hello, folks. Bryant Richards. I am Associate Professor of Accounting and Finance at Nichol College here. I've been here full-time for 7 years, part-time for 15 years. Prior to that, I spent 20 plus years in the accounting profession and industry. My last role was as an internal audit and compliance executive for a large national gaming organization. And recently, I've spent 2 years having launched the Center for Intelligent Process Automation, one we believe to be the first in the United States, maybe even North America.
What are you trying to achieve by setting up CIPA, and what are the college and the students each getting from this program?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Karen. So in higher ed, we're always looking at our stakeholders and trying to provide value to as many of them as possible. In this case, we're always looking at our students first as a small teaching business school, so our students do come first. But before we get to sort of what kind of value we're getting to them, I think it's real important to start with what's the problem we're trying to solve. And ideally, when we start with that problem, you can sort of see sort of the value that's coming from it. And the problem we're trying to solve is there's a giant sort of divide or gap between business and technology within industry. Now, I spent 20 some odd years in internal audit, and I know various folks have different opinions of what internal auditors might be. Some used to refer to me as a seagull. I don't know if you've heard this one before.
I have.
Make a lot of noise, mess all over everything, and then leave. So that's not exactly what internal audit does, but it gets a laugh. But one of the things internal audit does is it helps organizations pretty much identify and solve problems in high-risk areas. And 20 years or so of almost of doing this, and what you found is that a lot of the high-risk problems that we found came from technology deployments. And if you've ever worked on a pre or post implementation review, what you find very quickly is that there's so many problems that come after these deployments. And what's important to understand is that there's a lot of benefits that can come from them. A lot of statistics show that about 50% of these projects fail in different ways. So a lot of money is invested. But when you look at this, you're talking about really well-resourced companies using very well-skilled people, and 50% of them fail. What happens now is that when we're looking at the emerging technology and we're looking at RPA and some of the other tools that have come in, we're actually democratizing the technology, which allows us to spread out these opportunities and benefits to so many people. But more importantly, we're actually widening that divide in now sharing all of the problems associated with that with people, frankly, who aren't necessarily trained for how to at least get a 50% score on that test. So what we're seeing with this is almost an exponential increase in the problems with not necessarily getting the benefits. So that's sort of the perspective we see from our research and from talking to our stakeholders of what the industry or societal problem is out there. And all we're trying to do is help fill the gap with skills and abilities of the people who are actually going to be doing that work.
Do the businesses, or why do the businesses, Brian, then struggle to understand, RPA, intelligent automation, data analytics, and digital technologies? Because 50 isn't a score that you would naturally want on a test. I'd like slightly higher.
Wow. Yes. So I love the question. I asked it a lot when I was in industry myself. I think what you'll find is that technology is so powerful that if you're playing baseball or something, you're hitting 300, you're almost in the Hall of Fame. I don't think that's the scorecard any executive would ever sign off on, or CEO or CFO saying, "Oh, I'm going to get half of these right. Don't worry." But I do think it's so important to business, and we've seen that you have to do it. But I'd also seen that it's actually really hard to do well. There's a lot of skills, there's a lot of processes, there's culture to deal with, there's a lot of implementation risks. So your question makes me want to pause and think about this more before I answer. But clearly, organizations are pressured to be successful with technology, and sometimes I think that pressure, forces that 50% rate a little bit.
In terms of business, we've just mentioned that the education sector in the US, from the distant eye, is just another business, a really important business. Does it need to see a strong business case that returns hard cash from RPA and intelligent automation, or what is the education sector's primary goal from using that tech?
Yeah, so the education sector, when you lump it all together, is a really varied sector. So it's hard to answer that question. I would say this: one of the important things to understand from the sector standpoint is the stakeholder math, or the scorecards are very different from what you typically see in industry, and the culture and the structure within these organizations are different as well, as they're aiming to support, in many cases, more stakeholders, or they're aimed to support stakeholders very differently. And that's number one. So I think it's hard to say, well, does any school just want more cash? Well, sure, I think a lot of schools would like to be more effective. You might find that effectiveness and efficiency is not on their top of their priority list in terms of their mission and what they're aiming at doing. And if you look in the sector a little bit, you'll quickly find that efficiency is definitely not the name of the game here, even though it would be really helpful. And I think one of the things you want to think about too is there's not a lot of businesses that can just go ask for that money, right? So think about it this way: we're a sector that's really good at asking for funding in different ways to support important initiatives that help society. And so in implementing intelligent automation in a culture not necessarily designed for that or not trained for that is actually really, really hard. But asking for money in a culture that's designed for that and trained for that is a lot easier. So I think that might set the stage of a lot of different factors together with maybe a simple example.
Do you think the education sector is ripe for automation, data analytics, digital tooling?
100%. And we're seeing use cases already. One of the things you got to understand about higher ed, and I'm going to just go out on a limb here and throw in the public sector, if you don't mind. You'll have an exclusive, but I'm going to suggest that those industries and sectors are a little slow. Huh?
We're doing controversial tonight.
Hot take, right? So we're seeing this in a lot of different ways. In those there's a number of use cases that are being applied. Data analytics and machine learning is being applied to understanding retention and how to recruit students. That's a real easy use case in a lot of organizations. But there's so many tried and true, just if I could talk basic RPA cases where you could automate so many painful processes that in a lot of cases probably aren't the leanest and most effective anyway, because the organizations, again, aren't usually set up for that as their priority. And I think schools could benefit tremendously. So from the standpoint of use cases versus, possibilities and ROI, ripe is definitely the right word. In terms of convincing someone to prioritize this over other important initiatives in an environment that's really not that wired to be good at efficiency and effectiveness, I don't know if ripe's the right word. I think it's challenging. I really do. So the use cases are definitely there. The implementation risks are likely higher, though.
You are training students, though, to do process mining, data analytics, intelligent automation, RPA. That, I'm sure, creates a fantastic career opportunity for those students. I'd be interested to hear what they say. But it also creates a tremendous pipeline for colleges who could take advantage of those students because they know the tools and they know the environment. Are education sectors, centers, colleges aware that they have a tremendous pipeline of talent that could impact them in a really positive way? Because I'm assuming the more efficient they are, the better they can use the cash that's donated or the wider their reach.
Yeah, I work in a small business school where small use cases and small ROIs can be really impactful. We're not a large school, but you'd be surprised at what we can do with a small amount of money to better satisfy our stakeholders and improve our mission. So, yes, I think we're a living proof of concept of everything you just said. The students, and the reason we've gravitated to this, as I mentioned, there's a problem here that we're trying to solve for society and kind of do our part. And we think it's an honest thing to do. But as you look around, it actually appears to be an innovative thing to do. And we wouldn't even be out there if it wasn't for our leader, Glenn Solmacy, our president, who's had some experience in this space and really has a clear vision for it. But with that being said, our students very quickly, with the training we're giving them, can solve problems for businesses. They can create automations. We have lots of examples where they go in and create automations. We have organizations who are currently, talking to us about sort of renting our students while they're working for us to give them an experience because they can't necessarily find the skill sets out there to help solve their problems. And as we're looking at this small center with, I'd say, I think we've got at most 10 students working in it full time while we're training a whole bunch of others through curriculum. Those 10 students are actually starting to build up an internal capacity and awareness and understanding for our organization as we're doing small implementations of what I see as sort of these derelict processes that no one will ever address. So I 100% agree with what you're saying. And I think as that proof of concept grows and people see it, they're very going to quickly see that, teaching a student for a year or two with some skills and having them solve some problems for them is a very, very valuable thing to do.
Would you like to see the school replicated across US colleges and, as you mentioned earlier on, government?
Yeah, so I think the use cases or the proof of concept still has some proving to do. There's some really clear things. Teaching students intelligent automation and other related technology skills in a business environment, it works, it matters. It's very valuable. It's valuable to the students. It's valuable to the level of problems they can solve. It transforms a lot of students who don't like learning in what appears to be more traditional ways. So that 100%, that use case is, that cake is baked, I think, in my opinion. In terms of replicating the center, the neat thing about the higher education system is it's so varied in so many different ways. We actually, based off some of your guidance, have aimed at sort of a narrow thing that we think we're really good at. We're great at experiential education. We're great at being nimble and fast. We're great at involving our students. And we thought that this was a great way for us to contribute to this problem. I'm really curious as to what other organizations would do. I want them to help solve the problem, but I don't know if I'd say go do it like us. I think some couldn't and some shouldn't.
So, Bryant, if people want to find out a little bit more about you, Nichols College, the CIPA program, how might they do so?
Oh, sure. So Nichols College, we're definitely on social media. www.nichols.edu gets you to our website and all that stuff. If you're looking for more intelligent automation related material, we have a website at CIPA.nichols.edu. And what's neat about that site is, although it opens with a big video of me, which I don't know, it's okay. It give you kind of a sense of what's going on. There's a lot of use cases and student activity within the news that really sort of captures the attention and starts showing you what it is we're really doing. And you can see the power of the students and how they're interacting with industry and doing research and some really cool stuff. And of course, if anybody's interested specifically in what I have to bring to this and wants to connect with me, I'm always open to connecting on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Bryant, thank you so much indeed for sharing your knowledge of the private sector the education sector and the government sector, I think what you're doing is massively valuable, not just for the colleges, as you mentioned, for society as well. And the bit that probably excites me most is you creating future-ready, highly employable students who have careers in front of them that you and I maybe could have only dreamed of 10 or 20 years ago. What an exciting thing to be involved in.